This is a microphone test. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. This is a microphone test. Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us for tonight's Dixie Fire Incident Update over Facebook Live. My name is Toby Weed, Public Information Officer with Great Basin Incident Management Team 1. If you have any questions for our speakers this evening, please submit them in the comment section below. First, let me bring you the latest numbers regarding the Dixie Fire. The Dixie Fire is just about 915,000 acres. 915,000 acres, that is, and it is 58% contained. There are 4,584 people assigned to this incident. And now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Please welcome Incident Meteorologist Jack Messick.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Currently, the situation over the western states, especially Nevada and California, is there's an intense, meaning very strong, high pressure that is centered over central Nevada, and it is spreading in all directions. And what this does is this takes the storms that come in off the Pacific, and they are pushed further west, and they go further north by the time they enter the west coast, leaving California and much of the rest of the U.S. coast fairly dry, with no storms coming in. And that is the case this week. For the next 7 days, we expect no precipitation at all, which is what this fire really needs. But it's not there. So what's going to be happening instead with the high pressure in place is sunny skies for the most part, or at least mostly sunny. We will get some clouds later on this week. But these sunny skies produce really warm temperatures. In fact, we're near record heat for this time of year. Reno was expected to hit a record today and tomorrow. And to our west, in the Sacramento Valley, they actually have a heat advisory out to warn people of the excessive heat and the very little overnight temperature cooling that they get during these episodes. So that's going to continue for at least a couple of days before the clouds move in. These clouds will not, as I said, bring any sort of precipitation, but they will shade things. So by Thursday or so, we are looking at some cloud cover to help take the edge off the temperatures. However, what we really need is the humidity will be increasing as well. That's what happens when temperatures cool, but it's really not enough to help things. The winds also. The nice thing about having high pressure over us is that the winds tend to be lighter, and they will be. Usually the winds are stronger around lows and cold fronts, but under high pressure, we're looking at pretty typical Sierra Nevada and Southern Cascades weather, where in the afternoon you get the upslope winds, which for this locale are pretty much out of the southwest, and in the afternoon they can gust into the 20-mile-an-hour range. There's one day this week on Thursday, and Friday too, where it'll be probably gusting in the upper 20s, but certainly not anything excessive, and that would be the highest gust we would see at places like the escarpment that sits way above much of the fire, except where it's gone over into the 395 corridor. That's all I have. If you have any further questions, please go ahead and enter them in the box.
And next, Tobin Kelly.
Yeah, good evening. So the fire behavior today was quite a bit less, at least in extent, than we've seen over the last number of days. So that was very good to see today. Still some very active fire behavior out there. So talk a little bit about what's going on, out in the west half. Still some smokes popping up there, but no kind of activity that has been causing any kind of concern. In the Devil's Punch Bowl above H60, that fire, then that steep country keeps finding little pockets of fuel. They keep working on it. That'll still continue to happen. No big issues with the winds we have up there, so not seeing any points of real concern there. All along Grizzly Ridge and over to Turner Ridge, the winds are very favorable today. That southwest wind, still some interior pockets burning out up there, but that's all really starting to look pretty good. As we roll around Turner Ridge, this part of the fire gets out into more lighter fuels. A lot of that is burned out quite well. In fact, this whole line all the way through here on the south end of Coyote Hills, a lot of lighter fuels. that was looking very quiet today. So that's being very good. Again, the southwest winds are going to tend to keep pushing that back into itself all along here. So you move over into Horton Ridge here at the north end of Horton Ridge. That country is really broken up. So there's little uphill runs it can do, real complex topography. So the winds kind of work in there and push the fire different ways. So that's been difficult for the crews to work on. These winds have been really inconsistent up here. They kind of shift back and forth, but much quieter today. Still some pretty good columns coming out of there, but nothing compared to what we've seen. As you move down into the Dixie Valley, the fire comes across the north end and then up towards Dixie Mountain. The fire is sitting up on a ridge there. The winds are very favorable to push that back into where the fire came out of Ross Canyon, and so that was looking pretty good. It's really starting to quiet down today. So again, the winds tomorrow are going to be very favorable for all this country through here. Part of the concern at Dixie is still some of the, if a spot pops out here, something coming in, but that is getting to be less and less of a concern with the work the crews are doing out there. As you can see, the fire has merged with the sugar fire all the way up through here. A little bit of fire activity in that hole up there, potential for that to fill in, but that was being pretty quiet up there today. Drove around the escarpment today. That fire was kind of backing down, making little flanking runs, which is a good way for that to clean up because it's not allowing it to get a big head of steam coming off the top there. We haven't seen those super strong front winds to push that down. And as that fire gets closer and closer to the bottom, we're going to see less and less chance for it to make a big run. This was looking pretty quiet up here, a little bit of fire up in the corner. This whole side was starting to look pretty good. Drove a lot of this line out here today. Had a little pocket to take off this morning inside the line, but that was starting to look pretty quiet. Still some potential there with those southwest winds to push something out, but that is looking less and less. So overall, things are starting to look up with a combination of less ground for the fire to burn in, and the weather. We're just not seeing the super strong winds. We were looking at a potential cold front on Tuesday. We're not seeing that now. So the winds are going to remain mostly favorable and still fairly light. So that should make for pretty good firefighting conditions.
Thanks, Tobin. We'll now be presenting a video update from the West Zone featuring Chief Tony Brunel.
Good evening. My name is Tony Brownell, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 1, Deputy Operations. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update for the West Zone tonight. So down in the old branch 1, 5, and 7, that was where early on in the fire. That area is in mop-up and patrol right now. No issues. We flew with an IR aircraft the other day, and there was no heat in there except for the Butte Meadows area where we had that 7-acre slop over in the Humbug Summit area, but that's all contained in the mop-up status. Moving into branch 9, we're what we call mop-up and patrol. We're putting out all the hot spots we can, further in there as far as we can, and getting that all mopped up. Moving into branch 13. 13 was active today in the Lassen Volcanic National Park. It's very actively burning up by the Immigrant Trail, also known as Pacific Coast Trail. And we tied it in on the bottom of Riker Mountain, and we're on the Hat Creek. We're just bringing it up the Hat Creek drainage into Badger Flats, and we're going to tie it into Prospect. So we're all set to tie that all in tonight, hopefully. If not, we'll monitor it and let it slowly burn into itself. Moving to branch 16, Quebec was quiet today. Even that area up here where we had a lot of the spot fires a couple days ago, we got those all mopped up. We're in the mop-up stages in there. But this whole area is very tricky. We're getting some very erratic winds. They blow one way, and half an hour later, it's blowing a different way. So in the case in point today, it came out, and it blew towards Highway 44. We stopped it, and now it's at the toe of the slope in the grass, and it's now changed directions, going back into the Westwood Hall Road, and it's contained on the north side. We're working on the south side. Nothing really reported in S&T. It's just still in mop-up stages. Still getting calls for service in the Almanor and the Westwood area, but no big deal. We're maintaining all those, working with our Caltrans, make sure we don't get any spots on the Highway 36 corridor. Westwood's looking good in that area from below Susanville. Janesville's in mop-up right now. We're trying to secure all that area in there real quick. It's a little heavier mop-up in some areas. And we had the sun on it the last couple of days, so there's more stuff popping up, so we're taking care of that. On the 395 corridor, the fire is bumping into the Beckworth burn, and it's about 2 miles from bumping into the line that came off of Black Mountain. So we have crews down there monitoring it, keeping it in check so it doesn't cross. We got the mobile retardant base set up today, and it's pumping. So with rotor wing, we're painting that line coming down from Black Mountain, and we're also painting around the houses with retardant with the water tenders. So we're pretty secure down there. It is among the houses, but everything's secure right now. Moving down that left flank of the spot fire, the finger, the slop over yesterday, about 120 acres. It has line all the way around it, and it is plumbed, and they're actively mopping it up. And we're tied in all the way down at the bottom of Squaw Peak, and we've pushed a little bit further to the west to tie that back into the walker, so it's pretty secure. So right now we're doing pretty good. The wind's our factor, but we're making progress every day. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Operations Section Chief Jeff Serber.
Thanks, Toby. So to tag on to what the West Zone just provided for an update, we'll go back over here to the 395. Well, we'll start over here on our Oscar division. This country back in here has not been an issue for a little bit, other than right where we had the slop over yesterday, right down in this area. And in that area yesterday, it was able to sneak out. We have a lot of folks out there, but we also have miles and miles of line. So what happens out there is that as they get in dozer line and they're pulling hose and that kind of thing to mop up along the line, where there happens to be nobody at that point in time, maybe there's a mile between folks, and we'll get notified by air attack that we have a problem, and we'll go hit it hard. We did that yesterday with both West Zone resources and East Zone resources, and we're able to get that encircled with dozer line last night, and it was pretty much mopping it up today. So that's a good thing. Any escape in here gives that fire potential to come on, move down, and come into Milford. So we took real quick and action on that and caught up with it. Moving over to the Division Papa, which pretty much goes all the way around the front of the fire. What we have there is this area along the, I think they're calling that the sensitive area right in there, is looking good. I went through there today, came down. All this country in here is starting to look real good, except right here where West Zone made that comment about throwing retardant at it, pretty much with a couple Chinook helicopters. If anybody's driving 395, they probably saw that this afternoon. They have a short haul from the Hurlong mobile retardant base back over here. What we decided to do, because we've become a higher priority fire in the nation, we've started to get hot shot crews. We're supposed to get 4 of them in the next day or two. Rather than let this thing continue to eat away and take the chance that it takes 2 or 3 days to get all the way over here to this line and get secured, we don't want to take the chance that the weather, wind, anything could happen that would blow this back down on the highway or affect these personal properties down here along the highway. So what we've done is decided to start putting the retardant on that line, buy us time to get those crews in there, and we plan to go direct on that line, that steep face coming up and down from the up from the highway and down from the top. Tie that off and save maybe 1,500 acres in there, which is, it doesn't sound like 1,500, doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking 900,000, but it's worthwhile. We feel like anything we can do is worthwhile to save some green out there. So that's kind of what we're doing. This fire continues to back the rest of it. Tonight, I just talked to the West Zone folks, and what we're going to try to do in here, instead of letting this fire come all the way over to the line, it is dropping down off the top right now. If it gets into ground that's dozer friendly, they'll cut it off at an angle down in here tonight with the dozer and keep it from coming all the way down to the corner and affecting more of the highway corridor or private property. So that's what's going on in Papa. And then moving into our division, Quebec. This area right here is the Dixie Valley area. Yesterday we did have some property loss in there in the north end of Dixie Valley. That loss will be documented by a team that comes in and assesses what property was lost and makes a report, and that'll be coming out in the coming days. We were able to get it stopped partway into that private property with a lot of good work by the firefighters down in there. Building dozer line today, dozer line yesterday, and the day before, actually, all through here, and then tied it in with hand line last night over to the sugar fire from the Beckworth complex. So this is tied up pretty good right now. We're starting to feel confident. I shouldn't say real confident, but nothing until 2 or 3 days goes by on one of our lines, we don't have a lot of confidence because this fire's proven its ability to sustain itself. So we do have line in, and we'll continue to reinforce it. We have dozer line and hand line along this whole piece back over to the 01 road from the Dixie Valley community back to the 01. That's starting to get reinforced better. We also did put in contingency line here. We had a lot of heavy equipment. We put in contingency line here, and all the way down here near Beckworth, we went ahead and gotten the sagebrush down there because we just don't trust the fact that after all this time and 6 weeks of time that we don't trust that we have this today. So we have lots of other opportunities to try to catch it. We are also improving the 177 road with masticators in case that was ever had to be used to hold the fire from coming back towards Lake Davis. So a lot of work's going on out there in the front of this fire, 10 miles or more in front of this fire, in the event something squeezes through and pops out, especially with the kind of weather we're having and no relief from rain or any moisture in the near future. And then going on back from that point, everything's starting to moderate real well, and we haven't had any issues with any escape fire all the way back from the 01 road, pretty much I said the 01 from Four Corners on the 177, 01, all the way back to the back of the fire. We still do get some calls from the public of concern, and we follow up every single one of those, and we appreciate when you give us your name and phone number, and we can follow up with you and make sure that we're finding exactly what it is you're asking about and taking care of it. Thank you.
Okay, and now speaking for the Plumas County Sheriff, Chandler Pay.
Good evening. My name is Deputy Chandler Pay. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Plumas County Sheriff's Office and Office of Emergency Services. Today we made no changes to our evacuation orders or warnings, and want to touch base a little bit about Taylorsville. As the incident described, they still have some moderate fire behavior up near the Devil's Punch Bowl, and for that reason, the community of Taylorsville will remain on a mandatory evacuation order at this time. I wish we could provide you an update of when we expect that to change, but unfortunately, the way this fire has gone, that's just not something we can do. For our current evacuation map, I encourage you to go to community.zonehaven.com. You'll be able to look at all of our warnings and orders there. I want to reiterate what I did a couple nights ago, and that was that Phase 1 household hazardous cleanup has begun and is well underway here in Plumas County. After Phase 1 is completed, that is when you can return to your property and kind of get to that SIF portion, but we want you to be careful when you do that because we don't want you to disturb the ash footprint, especially if you plan on using the state's program for Phase 2 cleanup. And that brings me into some information for Phase 2 cleanup. After Phase 1 is done, we will move in to the Phase 2 cleanup stage, and part of that stage is that you as a property owner, if you have an affected property, you will need to fill out what we refer to as an ROE, and that is a right of entry form. You can do that by going to the plumascounty.us website, going under the Dixie Fire tab, and there's a whole lot of information under there, including a checklist about everything you need to do and what type of information you will need. If you have any questions about that process, you can email roe@countyofplumas.com. There's also a phone number on the website that you can call for assistance with that, and we really encourage you to reach out with all of your questions and to get assistance with that process. It's a lengthy process there, and the form is a lengthy form as well, so we want to make sure that you fill that out correctly so that you can receive the help in a timely manner. As the incident stated, we did receive information that there is confirmed structure loss in the Dixie Valley area, and they'll continue to get the damage assessment team in there as soon as it's safe to do so that we can provide you with that information. And as soon as we have that information, we'll put that on our website. We've really seen this community here in Plumas step up for each other during this time of need. The Sheriff's Office would like to thank you for your support, your cooperation, and we'd like to thank each and every one of the emergency responders for helping out during this devastating event. We will continue to provide information throughout the duration of this event, even as we transition into more of recovery, but at this time we're still very much in a response phase and recovery phase due to the duration of this event. For the most current information, please follow us on the Plumas County Sheriff's Office Facebook page, and also go to the plumascounty.us website. We have a lot of resources on there. We see a lot of questions come out on not only our Facebook page, but the incident Facebook page for the East Zone and the West Zone. A lot of those questions can be answered by going to the plumascounty.us website and exploring that information. There's lots of information about returning home, debris removal, and some safety considerations, including lots of maps. You can go on there and look at the maps that the household hazardous waste folks are providing. You can go in there, type in your address, and see if that's been completed. There's also the damage inspection maps that are on there. You can go on and see which structures have been affected. And something we put out a little while ago was that the Alameda County Sheriff's Office supplied us with their UAV team, which is their drone operator team. They came up, did a lot of work for us up here, did a lot of drone flights, and took some photographs. So that information is on the website as well if you're not able to return to the area in person, either because you're out of the area or you're not comfortable doing so. You can go to our website and look at all that information on there. And thank you, and have a safe night.
Thanks, Chandler. We will now present a video update with our agency administrator for the Lassen National Forest, Deb Bumpus.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deb Bumpus. I'm one of the agency administrators on the Dixie incident. And I just want to give you an update on a few things here around camp. As we move into this coming week following Labor Day, we do have another camp that's set up in the Old Station area. You folks up in Old Station, Shingletown, and around the park will see additional resources in that area, and should help you in getting answers to questions that you might have, and at least you'll know that you've got a large contingency up there providing protection to you. Also, just want to recognize that this is Labor Day, and this is recognition of all the hard workers here in the United States, and also right here on the Dixie incident. We recognize that this morning with all of our folks here on the fire, and just appreciate those folks that are out there helping you and providing information. Again, if you have questions that you're not getting answered when we do these updates, just make sure that you send those in. We'll get those answered as well as we can. I know that there's some questions about how the fire is moving down the south along the escarpment, and also up in the Old Station area. So those are some areas that we are focusing on. Just as a reminder, as areas start to open back up, we still have a fire closure within the Forest Service side of the Dixie fire. That's both on the Plumas and the Lassen. And then we have a general closure on the other forested lands that are not underneath that fire closure. So again, this was put in place for protection of the public, and also because we are just strained with resources if something were to happen. We're really focusing our time and our efforts on the Dixie incident as much as possible. So please pay attention to those, stay away from the firefighters out in the field, give them the space that they need to do their work. I hope you all have a good evening, have enjoyed your Labor Day holiday. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Agency Administrator for the Plumas National Forest, Ann Carlson.
Thank you. I'm here representing Chris Carlton, the Forest Supervisor. I actually come from the Mendocino National Forest, and it's helping out here. And something that really strikes me with this fire is how large it is. We keep talking about 915,000 acres. You know, how big is that? We managed to squeeze most of it onto a map, so you get lulled into this idea that it's actually not that big, but it is huge. So 915,000 acres is like bigger than the state of Rhode Island, right? So we mapped the perimeter of the fire today, like you go all around the edge of all of it. And it's 845 miles, 845 miles. So then what does that compare to? So the entire coastline of California is 840 miles. So it's very close to the entire coastline of California. So if you're driving from Quincy and you go out past Salt Lake and you go out past, Rock Springs a little ways, you can drive that far in 845 miles. So just get a feel for it to go all the way around this fire and the huge area it is. We have lots of people working on this fire. So, and it's right in your backyard. And I'm really glad that a number of folks have been able to come back in on their properties. I know some folks are still in a mandatory evacuation, some are in a warning. So I just want to tell you, when an area burns, there's still a lot of safety hazards. Overhead hazards from dead tree branches and dead trees. There's stump holes, there's material on the ground. So just be really careful when you come back into your property or you're around any of these burned areas. Now, as Deb mentioned, the forest is closed right now. There's 2 closure orders, one for the fire area that will remain in place until we determine that, there aren't a lot of our equipment's not out there, that it's safe to return into that area. That could be a fairly long closure. There's another closure in place that affects all the national forests in California, including the Mendocino, my home forest. That's in place because we are so stripped down fighting fires across the U.S., really, but really in the West here, there's a number of fires and a lot in California, and we just don't have the capacity to respond to any more starts, or if there's an emergency, such as an accident or something, we don't have the capacity to provide that safety measure for people visiting the forest. So we ask and have this closure order in place for the national forests. This closure order is in place until September 17th at midnight. Before that, we will reevaluate forest by forest whether the closure will continue for the entire forest or whether it may be modified or dropped for certain forests. So for now, the Plumas is entirely closed. So I did get a couple questions along these lines, about this September 17th date. And then also why people are seeing like campers going into Lake Davis. So they should not be going into Lake Davis. There are a couple of campgrounds I know that have been made available for evacuees. There's information numbers you can contact to find out which specific campgrounds those are. But any areas that involve the National Forest are closed. And I realize it's Labor Day weekend, you want to get out and recreate, but the forest is closed. You could get ticketed. Mainly our law enforcement people are asking you to move on. Please just don't come in here. Get in the middle of our operations. We're still very busy. So please heed the closure order. I think that's all I have for you. Just as you come in, I was actually evacuated myself out of the Susanville area for a while. My personal home is there, and even though you can come back in, be prepared. Conditions change out there. So please pack your go bag, have it ready to go, be ready, have a plan for your pets, and just stay safe. All right, with that, I'm going to hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tonight's final speaker is our Incident Commander, Evans Quo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of Nick Truax, the Incident Commander for California Team, or Cal Fire Team 1, and myself, with the Great Basin Team 1, I'd like to thank you all for joining us on the this Labor Day weekend. As you've been hearing the report outs from our operations folks, that the fire is still very active and it still has a ton of potential out there. But we are continuing to persevere, and fortunately we did get a little bit of a break in the weather today, so we're trying to take advantage of that much as possible. For the east zone of the fire, we do have about 4 areas of concern. The first one, as operations mentioned, is the Diamond Mountain Escarpment up on the north end, just up below or just above Highway 395, bringing that fire down there. The other one is the Dixie Valley area. Right up in this area here. The next area is keeping the fire from continue moving to the south and impacting Highway 70 corridor area. And then the last one is the Devil's Punch Bowl over there, kind of above East Quincy and above Taylorsville. It's kind of on that ridge line between the two. And then West Zone, they're still working on that Hack Creek, Badger Pass area up in the Lassen Volcanic Park, and then also keeping fire from impacting Old Mission, and then keeping fire south of Highway 44. So we definitely have our work cut out for us, but we are committed to staying in the fight. And the good news, another little bit of good news, is we are finally starting to get some of the replacement resources for crews and engines and other folks that timed out last week. And now we're about up to a little over 4,500 firefighters committed to both this entire fire, which is an increase of about 500-600 people or firefighters. So that's all good news. In addition to this Facebook Live broadcast, Incident Commander Nick Truax and I also are going to resume doing a morning fire talk on KJDX radio station 93.3. We do that every morning at approximately 7:45 in the morning. We suspended over the holiday weekend, but we're going to resume in the morning. Before we conclude for today, we did get some questions online, so I'm going to do my best to address them. The first question has to do with the impact that the fire had on Dixie Valley. And so Dixie Valley, right in here, where the number of structures, the bulk of the structures are still outside the fire perimeter, where we have been able to secure the edges and stop southerly progression. And as long as those lines hold, we think the risk to those structures is going to go down. But right now, until we can secure that, it's still higher. The major area of impact where the structures that were inside the fire perimeter got impacted was here's Ross Canyon, and that's pretty much that general area. I can't give you numbers just because right now nothing is confirmed until the inspection team can get in there from the county. But we have been providing the Plumas County Sheriff's Office with this information, and I believe it's their task is to then notify the homeowners once we have confirmation from the inspection team. So that should be happening here in the next day or so. And again, my apologies for your loss. Another question has to do with the risk that the Devil's Punch Bowl poses for East Quincy. Well, to be honest, it's not just East Quincy that we're concerned about, but it's also Taylorsville, because the Devil's Punch Bowl is right on that hillside right above Taylorsville. So what we've been experiencing for the last few days is that fire is still there. It's still persistent, but it's on an extremely steep hillside. In fact, there's at least 2 avalanche chutes on the Taylorsville side where you can see over the years, just the gravity, and because of the sheer steepness of the slope, things have come down. And so there's a lot of debris in that area, both on the ground, available fuels, and because of the steepness of the slope, that's why we have not gone direct yet with the hand crews. What we have been trying to do is, instead of using this larger indirect box with dozer line prep to burn all that out and secure both the south flank and the north flank, the south flank to protect East Quincy, the north flank to protect Taylorsville, is the crews have been looking at ways to make it smaller. So they've grabbed onto a ridge line that we can work with hand crews, and they've constructed hand line down that ridge to make it a smaller area. And so that if and when it comes to the point in time where we do have to put fire on the ground to contain all that area, it's a much smaller area and a lot less risk than a much larger area to burn. Because that's a planned firing operation, we're really trying to find that right window of opportunity to do so when the winds are favorable for both burning on one side as well as burning from the other. Because we do have concerns of fire making it to the south and fire making it to the north. So for us, it's a matter of finding the right time of day to do it, the right weather window. And unfortunately, with as active as our fire has been with the winds going in various different directions, this is just has not been the time. So, but we're going to keep an eye on that very closely and look for the window of opportunity to address that. There's also the possibility that we've been using helicopters to hold this fire in check, and we've been looking at the amount of heat that's still in there. In fact, I think the other night we flew a unmanned aerial system, a smaller UAS, probably about 4 feet in diameter, with an infrared camera on board, and they scanned that whole area to give us an indication of exactly how much heat there was in there. And the amount of heat residual amount of heat kind of surprised us that there wasn't as much as we thought there originally was, and a lot of that would probably had to do with a lot of the helicopter actions that we've been taking with the bucket work. So that's some good news there. A little more information about Lake Davis. I'm assuming you probably mean the work that's occurring on Turner's Ridge, as well as in Grizzly Creek going up to Grizzly Ridge. So as operations been reporting, none of this fire perimeter all the way around here, all the way to Clover Meadow we have not seen any movement on the fire. So we're feeling we're more and more confident every day that we've stopped the fire in that area, and we're secured and mopped it up enough that probably in a few more days we might be able to put it into contained status. So, but we're working on that. What's going on in Genesee Valley? So up here in Genesee Valley, we've got a lot of firefighters in that area. We're mopping up and securing the fire perimeter around the houses. Several days ago, when the half battalion of Army troops showed up from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, we put 80 of them in there, and they were working in amongst all the other engine crews and firefighters that we had assigned to that location. And with that boost of an extra 80 people, we were really able to gain a lot of good ground in there. So I think, as of the report I heard the other day, is the majority of the houses all now have about a good 100 feet mopped up around each one of those structures in there, and we're gaining on the remaining ones. And then once we get that 100 feet, we'll keep going a little bit deeper just to make sure that we're well secured around those houses. A question here is, when we say mop up, what does that mean? So that's a good question, and I've been watching our American Sign Language interpreters trying to pick up a little bit of terminology, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm going to demonstrate. I think this means mop up. So I'm looking for him for a confirmation, but so at any rate, mop up, what does it mean? So it's part of the phase of when we're fighting the fire. So the first thing we try to do is knock the heat out of it using aircraft, bucket work, what have you, so then we can get in close and construct the fire line. And the whole purpose of that fire line is to stop forward movement of the fire by removing available fuels in front of it. And then after that, we start mopping it up. And so mop up that basically literally means we extinguish every last ember out there. When we first get started, it's really big embers, and so using hose lays and water to take out the heat and extinguish the open flames, that helps. And then we start dealing with all the logs and stump holes that are still burning. So think of it as you're putting out a campfire. First thing you do is you dump some water on it. Well, just dumping water on it doesn't put it all the way out. You have to stir it with a shovel or a stick, and then you dump a little more water on it, and then you stir it some more, maybe mix in some cold dirt with it. That's mop up, except on a 915,000 acre scale. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of backbreaking work, and it really is only best accomplished with firefighters on the ground with hand tools and hoses. So it takes a while. So I'm looking to our facility. Do we have any additional questions from the public? Okay, if not, I'll hand it back to our facilitator. Thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 8th at the same time, which is 7:30 in the evening. And if you have any more questions, you can ask us on Facebook, and we'll try to answer you. Thanks.